Hi there. Thank you so much for joining me today for Inclusion Making It Work. My name is Melanie Carpenter, and today we're going to be talking about the foundations for an inclusive practice. What does it look like? And doing a bit of self-reflecting to see where we are on the continuum of inclusion and where we can work on improving our capabilities. So let's dive right in. So why are we here today? Let's look at our purpose. This professional learning session came from the direct need for our school site to have a more in-depth conversation of what inclusive classrooms look like and specific strategic supports and frameworks that address that need. 90% of those who took the survey, the professional needs survey, stated that they did not feel knowledgeable about including students with special needs in the general education classroom. And everyone who took the survey stated that they would benefit from learning more frameworks and strategies that do support inclusion. So this model was chosen because individual classrooms and specific student needs vary across the teachers who are taking this learning opportunity. So the frameworks and strategies that are given can be tailored to your specific need. Let's watch this quick video from ESPN about this young girl who participates in Special Olympics, but I want us to particularly focus on how the general education students benefit from her inclusion. So let's take a minute and watch the video.
The MATP program is the Motor Activities Training Program. It is for the students that are most severely impacted by their disability, and it's a way for them to be included into all of the Special Olympics.
I think MATP is so important to us because we are an inclusive organization and everybody has the right and the ability to participate at some level. And we do specially adapted sports just for them and their abilities.
Every time I see her doing something, I feel like it's something very special. I feel very proud of her. Jacqueline, she was born like perfect, and then she started having seizures when she was 18 months. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Because of the seizures, she stopped walking and talking. They removed 90% of the tumor.
Bye. Thank you.
Because it was been so many years in the hospital. Jackie used to be very shy, and now that she's going to school, she's more social.
Look who's that?
Miss Bates.
Yes. That's your teacher, Miss Bates.
Jackie is a freshman here at George Washington High School, and her teacher from last year said that She didn't really know a lot about Jackie and what she could and could not do. She kind of slept a lot. She was kind of unengaged at times. Fast forward to this year, where Jackie is, I think, a completely different girl. Oh, you got it! Nice. She is awake. She is engaged. She is communicating with meaning.
All right, it's your turn, Jackie.
I think part of that has to do with the mentors that we have in our classroom on a daily basis.
Hey, Jackie. How are you? My favorite part about working with Jackie is her smile. I think that it really lets you know that she's comfortable around you and she is happy. Want a high five?
Her being able to feel included has really made all the difference for her.
You ready to go to gym?
Philip is a student who's normally not really a leader. However, through this partnership, he has become a strong leader. 1, 2, 3, go! The respect that Philip shows Jackie is huge.
Yeah, Jackie. Yeah, that's cool.
I think Jackie's life has changed because she has this person that is really rooting for her and that is in her corner and believes in her, but also at the same time just treats her like she's a normal teenager.
All right, good job.
The MATP program makes all the difference in that individual's world, whether it's through just that one interaction or maybe through that one event, but it also continues to include throughout the school day. This program has changed me as a teacher because I see the possibilities that can happen. Got my eyes on you. That there are good people out there that actually just don't look at what a person looks like on the outside, but really takes the time to look at people on the inside. And I think that that's what's really about is it's humanity.
So let's go back. Let me move this back over here so you can see. So I think that really captured why so much of us are motivated to pursue an inclusive classroom, even though it is challenging. So our learning goals today are to identify 3 frameworks that serve as foundations for inclusive education, to define what an inclusive education means and what an inclusive classroom looks like, and to determine 2 specific strategies to support inclusion within the classroom using art. So we'll just keep going. So let's look at the foundations for an inclusive education. So they're grounded in providing proactive ways to address the learning differences, behavior management, and self-regulation. The idea is they all focus on supporting all students in reaching academic, social, emotional, and community-driven goals. So this isn't specifically for students with special needs. This is for all of our students. We're just targeting having more inclusive classrooms, and that means our students with special needs should be included into the least restrictive environment. So how do we do that? How do we make the environment and our curriculum and instruction work for us in these classrooms with all of our students? So look at the Universal Design for Learning framework. This addresses the what, why, and how of learning. It provides multiple means of engagement, representation, action, expression to promote equitable access to curriculum. So let's look at the UDL framework and identify 2 areas where you can improve your instructional strategies. All right, so here we have the Understanding by Design framework. sure you can see me. There we are. This is the Understanding by Design framework. So here you have the multiple means of engagement. Here you have multiple ways to represent information. And here you have multiple ways for action and expression. So this right here, we're looking at ways to provide interest, effort, and self-regulation. So how are kids going to engage with the materials? How are they going to engage with the curriculum? How are we going to represent what we're giving them under representation here? How are we going to have them comprehend what they're learning? Are we providing visuals? Are we using only words? This is a good time to really look at each category and self-reflect. Am I using multiple different tools right here through construction and composition? Different media? Am I allowing my students to explore all the ways to understand and deeply make connections with prior knowledge in the way that they do best? And the only way we can do that is by giving multiple ways. So the positive behavioral interventions and support, PBIS, I'm going to move myself over here so you can see the rest. It's an evidence-based approach to provide support to all students in achieving social, behavioral, and academic goals. It's a tiered approach. So tier 1, it's support for everybody. It's the equitable support for each student. Tier 2, it's at-risk students who need a little bit more support. And tier 3 is the high-risk behavior with individualized support. So what does PBIS look like in the classroom? And I know we use this on our campus, so you're familiar with it, but I feel like it's a great way to look at how this is such an important part for inclusion. Tiered levels of support you're offering already in your classrooms. So tailoring it to different students is all that you're doing. I say all that you're doing as if that's not difficult, but not all of our students with special needs are immediately in tier 3. And I think that's a difficult concept for a lot of people to grasp, but it's still differentiated. Each student has different needs. So it's really looking at that. So let's look at what does PBIS look like in the classroom. So there are multiple interventions and supports. And I think it's important, again, to break it down to see what you're already doing, where are your areas for growth. Are the foundations or your settings, routines, and expectations explicit? Do all your students know them? Would your students benefit from revisiting them? Students with special needs need the same thing. They need to know what's expected of them. They need to have a classroom that supports them in taking a break or getting up close and touching something. For practices, prevention and response. So are you providing quick prompts? Are you giving students the opportunity across the day to demonstrate proficiency? Are you giving them reinforcement through praise or other ways? These are the same tools that we use in special education classrooms and that you're using with your general education students. So taking the fear out of it and taking the unknown, you're already doing so much of this. So this is to reinforce that these foundations work across the board for all students. The one thing I would say is the data systems is a really important part of the collaboration communication between a general education teacher and a special education teacher. If you feel like you have exhausted all your resources with providing an inclusive classroom and you feel like it's still not working out, I would encourage you to look at taking more data to see what is happening before. Is this something really minor that's then escalating? Can I de-escalate the situation before it gets there? So really looking at the data, I think, is really important. And this is a visual of what are the tiers comprised of. So you can really see that the tier 1 is the largest base. Tier 2 is like small group interventions. So you have students who are maybe a little behind on certain skills, like maybe with counting or addition. Some students need a little extra support, and so they're in a small group together. And tier 3 is the individualized for a few. So they need almost completely different, completely modified and adapted curriculum or books to have the equitable access and to decrease behaviors and to give them what they need so they can learn. The third framework that we're covering is the social and emotional learning. So according to the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, social and emotional learning enhances students' capacities to integrate skills, attitudes, and behaviors to deal effectively and ethically with the daily tasks and challenges. So school is hard, and for our students with special needs, we are pushing them every day. So that's emotionally exhausting. I know lots of parents talk after, when they pick their kid up after school, and then when we see them the next day, they say, oh, they came home and fell asleep right away and didn't wake up until dinner. They're tired. So we want to give them a really solid framework in these 5 core competencies. So that way they know how to persevere. They know how to handle those tasks. They know how to challenge themselves and communicate their needs and self-regulate. And once again, this does not just benefit our students with special needs. This really does benefit everyone in the class. So it's a framework. So let's look at how you can incorporate that into your daily class.
Social emotional learning is essential.
It's the tools that kids need to be resilient, to be problem solvers, to be good people.
SEL is really about the holistic development of young people.
SEL is trying to bring a balance to the individual and what are the personal competencies you need to develop to be successful. How do you pull them all together so that kids can relate and navigate the world more effectively?
The myth was that knowledge was information that could be bolted onto a brain like any other kind of mechanical part. The truth is, knowledge is constructive. The truth is, all learning is relational. The truth is that emotion drives attention, and attention drives learning.
Social and emotional learning is about how you do school. It's about what the student experiences, what the student learns, how teachers teach.
We can think about schools and classrooms, out-of-school time spaces, families, etc., as places where there's an exchange of knowledge about the world, knowledge about yourself, and knowledge about the other persons that you're interacting with. All of those kinds of experiences, I think, help form and expose and shape the ways in which young people understand themselves and other people.
And we start talking about the whole child. Does your child understand self-awareness? Do they understand social awareness? Do they make good decisions? Are they responsible? And then we start talking about what that applies to academics and looking at all the essential skills we need them to be successful in life.
Children learn when their heart is open, engaged, connected, and filled with purpose.
Learning is magical, and through SEL, we can create conditions that allow all kids to access that magic.
So I think that video really does a great job of showing how our kids' academics are connected with their social emotional learning, and how we can connect those two, and how to emotionally invest in students and how to get them to emotionally invest back in their own education. So what does inclusion look like? Inclusion within education means modifying the existing educational structures to provide equitable access to high quality curriculum instruction, regardless of race, gender, language, socioeconomic status, and ability level. So inclusion is really a systemic breakdown of the way we've had education up to this point, where gifted students are at one school, students with special needs are in their own classroom, and there's very little crossover. Now, inclusion really is having everyone in the same class, everyone interacting, and this idea of full membership, the idea that all students have full membership to all the services we offer. Everyone is included. And I think that's really important for students to feel like they're full members, because when we go out into the world, our students are not segregated. We are all part of our own community. So we should model that for our students, and we should model it for parents and the larger community. So what does inclusion look like in the classroom? Let's take a peek. So in the classroom, you're providing the classroom itself provides multiple spaces for student learning and self-regulation. So maybe a quiet, calm area, a book reading area, an area where they can go get their wiggles out. I don't know a single student who doesn't benefit from having different areas where they can go to self-regulate. And that ties into the social and emotional learning. Can I recognize what I need before it becomes a problem? Can I ask for it, and can I go do it? The classroom displays expectations in a variety of formats, and I know most of you do that. I've seen you have images mirrored. The images that you have on the walls mirror the text that are next to them, and displaying information and resources in multiple formats. We all do quite a few videos and hands-on work. So just including to incorporate those aspects so students can interact with the information in multiple ways. The classroom respects all students' backgrounds and cultures and connects curriculums to students' lives. And it's a positive and rigorous environment. You're asking the students to work hard, but you're also encouraging them and supporting them. So the educator, what does an inclusive classroom, what does an inclusive education look like from the educator's perspective? So it's the UDL, the Universal Design for Learning Framework, multiple options for engagement, representation, and expression. You're basically providing as many ways as possible for students of all ability levels to have them demonstrate what they know to you. How can they learn, and how can they demonstrate that learning? So you're frequently checking for understanding, lots of formative assessments on the fly, which I know a lot of you guys do. So the same thing happens that's in the segregated classrooms right now. It happens in an inclusive classroom. You're still checking for everyone to gain knowledge, gain learning, understand, make connections. You're clearly communicating expectations. You're scaffolding instruction. So does this person need a small group instruction? Does this other student need a little more support? If you check in with 2 minutes with them, will that benefit? That's great. You're modeling personal reflection and positive behavior. You're saying, I don't know if I know how to answer that. What are some ways I can figure that question out? And you use data to inform instruction and differentiating. These are the PBIS kind of components, the data, but also we need to know what our students know, what they can demonstrate they know, and then really take data on to inform your own instruction. Do I need to reteach this? Do I need to correct my teaching? Do I need to offer multiple ways? And what does an inclusive class education look like for the student? So the student can tie new knowledge to previous knowledge. So they're showing those connections, engaging with curriculum through all sorts of materials. They persevere when faced with difficult tasks. They utilize all their social emotional competencies. They can self-regulate. They can ask for help. They can communicate clearly with intention. And these things are taught. So that's why we include them in the frameworks. Can they collaborate with peers? They communicate for learning, self-advocacy, and for pleasure. So they're communicating their understanding, they're asking for help, and then they're also saying, hello, how was your day? So let's look at the power elements for inclusive practice. Oh, I actually think I missed one here. Nope, I didn't. I apologize. So the power elements for inclusive classroom. This term was coined by the Massachusetts Model System. They have a really comprehensive, inclusive framework that they use. Obviously, we don't live in Massachusetts, so I'd be curious to see how it is implemented in the classroom. But they give a lot of support to their teachers. And I feel like this model system teacher rubric, it really allows us to comprehensively self-reflect and see what are areas we can grow, what are areas we're doing really well. Can I share my knowledge with a peer? So let's take a look at this. It's a Google Doc, so it's super simple to take a peek at, print off. It's just gonna load. So it uses all the standards. So let's see here. So you're looking at like curriculum and planning, assessment, instruction, the learning environment, shared responsibility, reflection, communication. So you're really looking at all aspects that we use in education and where can you improve. So I would take a minute or two to read over this rubric and see what areas am I doing well. I would highlight what you're doing well, and I would star your challenges. I'll give you a minute so you can see it. And I will also send this out to you, so that way you can have some more time with it. All right, so part of this learning opportunity that you've volunteered for is for us to grow as a learning community and figure out ways that we can increase inclusion at our school site. So now that you've looked at an area that you can improve upon, I would encourage you to create a personal goal related to that. It could be simply, I will try to embed one social emotional competency per week. I will be active in it. I will be active in learning how to use the UDL frameworks in my small group instruction. And then share the goal with a partner. You need someone to support you during this. I know it's challenging, and we've all here because we are a little frustrated with how slow inclusion is happening at our school. So I would encourage you to share the goal with a partner. It could be me, it could be your teammate, but let's collaboratively work on this and see what structures are working and what structures don't work. All right, so we're going to move on to specific strategies. So I wanted to look at specific strategies in both kindergarten and second grade to use art as a great equalizer, I guess you could say. So I know when you think about how we're constantly being asked to align all our instruction with standards, and when you're lesson planning to ensure that your lessons align with standards. And many people think that art doesn't do this, or that art is the time where you can sit back and relax and let your kids just go for it. But art is a really great way to have our students with special needs have access to the curriculum and demonstrate understanding in a really fun way, and it aligns with the standards. So I wanted to show you a couple examples in kindergarten and in second grade of how we can do that. So I took 2 different standards, one for kinder and one for second grade. But I used math because I feel like we have a lot of students who have a lot more opportunities when it comes to English language arts. Our librarian is great at incorporating that and aligning it with standards. So I wanted to focus on how we can really tie math and art in an inclusive way. And maybe this will give you an idea or show you a springboard of how to include all your students in something super fun, but also a learning experience. So with this math standard, understanding the relationship between numbers and quantities, connect counting to cardinality. So my example is using centers to support the UDL framework and use the math standards as the guiding principle. So providing multiple means of engagement, providing multiple means of expression, and multiple means of representation. So your students can make hand drawings, tracing children's hands, cut them out. So right there you have a variety of skill levels. Then you're going to attach the hands to popsicle sticks, and they can be used to count to groups of 5. I thought this is just such a really creative way of students to demonstrate their counting. Maybe they don't have the oral skills, the oral motor capability yet to pronounce all the number names, but can they show that they understand? Can they answer your questions? Even if it's guided. And this would be a great peer activity, right? One peer draws the hand, the other cuts it out, one is attaching it. So then you're having like collaboration, and you're having peers figure out how to talk to each other, working on persevering through. One student can't use scissors yet. So how do you persevere through those hard tasks? You really are tapping into all the different frameworks. Another idea is to use clay and make sculptures of things in nature that represent the number 5. Anyone can do this. Anyone can use hands, use a tool, use a cutout to participate. So there's a lot of ways to differentiate. And your counting might be scaffolded. You might be differentiating to help a student count, while another student is counting, has like a garden and all the items have 5 petals or dots. Or another way that also differentiates this standard is giving the students a picture with a stem with leaves and have them add petals and pollen. It could be a stamp with people with reduced motor skills. It could be, if they're working on fine motor skills, they actually could try to draw it. They could be gluing circles on. There are so many different ways to use this to differentiate for students' needs. And also the erasers and graphite to add and subtract from drawing. So you could have 10 parts of a caterpillar and you're taking off 1. Once again, there's a lot of ways to differentiate that. So in second grade, it's a different math content standard. So it's recognizing and drawing shapes, having specific attributes such as given number of angles or equal faces, identifying triangles, quadrilaterals, pentagons, hexagons, and cubes. Those are the specifics. So how does this work for art? To me, I look at that and I'm like, yeah, total art. Using the UDL framework, once again, you're providing multiple ways to allow students to access this information. So with both of these, there definitely would be an explicit teaching portion where you're modeling the counting, or you're modeling drawing and recognizing shapes, and you're explicitly teaching this is what this shape is, or this is how you count to 5, or counting by 5. But this is another way to provide equitable access to the curriculum, giving students multiple ways to engage, multiple ways to show what they know, and multiple ways to interact and increase collaboration, and to give them the pride that, yes, I am part of this classroom. Yes, this is my classroom. Yes, I'm working with my peer who's encouraging me and giving me a high five, even though it's really difficult. So looking at renditions of famous works of art and having the children scavenger hunt for shapes in the art. So you could have pairs, and one student could be pointing out the shape and another student could be model or imitating that point until they understand how to find that shape themselves. And then you have the students recreate the art starting with the shapes. So you're providing them with shapes. You're having them either cut out shapes, you're having them draw shapes themselves, and working with 3D shapes by making boxes out of origami paper and clay. Clay, once again, it's super manageable for most students. Most students have had a lot of experience with Play-Doh growing up. So it also gives students a way you could peer. It could be a small group activity where 3 or 4 students are working together to create a specific shape and you're checking in. All these are really good examples of where students with all ability levels can be included. So once again, we were here today because you all expressed the need to have more strategies to support students with special needs within the general education classroom. And I hope this was informative and gave you some motivation to try a new strategy, to try a new foundation. And the hope is that going forward, we can either collaborate in action research, where we go into teams and we take an aspect of the framework and we infuse our classrooms with it and we see how successful it is. And then we come back and we talk about it. And the same with if we're talking about like just our professional learning community, just collaborating together consistently to say, hey, I started with art, found out that that's not my strong suit. I'd rather do English language arts. Do you have strategies there? So I really hope that we can continue to collaborate this to increase inclusion within our school site. And thank you so much for participating. You will receive a satisfaction survey in the next week. I kindly ask that you fill it out and send it back so I know how to improve for the next session. Once again, thank you so much for taking time to watch my professional development session. I look forward to talking with you about it. Thank you. Bye.